Imagine for a second that you reach the absolute pinnacle of human achievement.
Yeah.
Like you have completely unchecked political power, endless wealth, and you've quite literally tasted every physical pleasure on earth.
Right.
You beat the game, you got the high score, and then you step up to a microphone to tell the world how incredible it feels. You look out at the crowd, you lean in, and you just say, 0 stars. Do not recommend. It's all completely pointless.
It is, it's the ultimate mic drop, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's one born out of this just profound existential exhaustion. And it forces us to really reevaluate, every single metric we use to measure a successful life.
And that is exactly the paradox we are unpacking today. So welcome to the deep dive. For this one, we are exploring a really brilliant analysis of some very ancient wisdom, specifically the book of Ecclesiastes. We're looking at chapter 1, verses 1 through 11.
Which is such a rich text.
It really is. And the mission today is to decode why achieving literally all of our goals can sometimes leave us feeling, well, completely hollow. We're looking at the danger of living purely what the text calls under the sun and how to build a legacy that actually matters. And the guy leaving that 0-star review that I mentioned, that's King Solomon.
Yeah, Solomon. And to really grasp the gravity of his conclusion, you have to kind of strip away the dusty historical caricature.
Right. He's not just a guy in a robe.
No, exactly. You have to look at the raw data of his life. Because Solomon was arguably the most successful human being in recorded history. During his reign, the economic prosperity was so staggering that the texts say silver was considered as common as stones in Jerusalem.
Which is just wild to think about. Like silver is gravel.
Right. And he held absolute diplomatic dominance. His intellectual brilliance drew royalty from across the known world just to hear him speak. And his personal life was essentially just a monument to unrestricted indulgence.
So, okay, we aren't talking about a monk living in a cave theorizing about the emptiness of wealth from the outside.
No, not at all.
We're talking about the guy who actually bought everything, did everything, and had the absolute highest score on the global leaderboard.
He was the ultimate winner.
Exactly. And when a billionaire tells you money doesn't buy happiness, you tend to lean in a little bit because they know. So when Solomon says vanity of vanities, all is vanity, it really stops you in your tracks. But I have to say, the word vanity feels a little weak here to me.
How so?
Well, it feels a little too tied up in our modern concepts of, arrogance or narcissism, like looking in the mirror too much.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, and that's actually because it is a notoriously difficult word to translate into English. In the original Hebrew text, that word is hevel.
Hevel.
Yeah, and the writer uses it, I think, 5 times in that one opening sentence just for maximum impact. And hevel literally translates to breath or fog or vapor.
Okay, vapor. I picture like stepping outside on a freezing January morning and seeing my breath in the air.
Yes, perfect form.
It has shape, it has form, it looks entirely solid for a split second, but the moment you reach out your hand to grab it,
you're just holding empty air.
Exactly, it's just gone.
That captures the physics of hevel perfectly, because the text isn't saying that human achievement is inherently evil or ugly. It is that it is completely ungraspable. You just can't hold on to it. And this is where we have to clarify a really major misconception about this source material.
Which is?
This ancient text is not endorsing toxic nihilism. It isn't telling you to just, lie down on the floor and give up because the universe is meaningless.
Which is a relief, honestly, because nobody wants to listen to a deep dive about giving up.
Right, far from it.
Yeah.
What Ecclesiastes is actually doing is providing a highly specific, almost medical diagnosis of a closed system. And the key phrase the writer uses for that system is under the sun.
Under the sun. Okay, so unpack that for me.
So this refers to a purely immanent frame. Basically, a life strictly confined to the mortal, earthly, material realm, completely disconnected from anything divine, transcendent, or eternal.
Okay, diagnosing a closed system makes a lot of sense. And the analysis we are looking at points directly to how the writer uses nature to illustrate this trap. Like verses 4 through 7 set up this giant cosmic repeat sign.
Oh yeah, the natural cycles.
Right. The sun rises, it sets, and it hurries back to where it started. The wind blows south, then north, spinning in these endless circles. The rivers constantly pour into the sea, but the ocean never actually fills up.
Nature is trapped in the state of frantic, perpetual motion. It's expending incalculable energy, yet it never arrives anywhere new.
It's the existential hamster wheel.
Exactly.
And if you translate that closed loop to our modern reality, it's honestly devastating. We often think of the daily grind as just waking up, sitting in traffic, working, paying bills, and going to sleep.
The rat race.
Right. But the deeper dread comes from the realization that even if you upgrade the wheel,
Oh, this is a great point.
like even if you trade the Toyota for a Porsche or the apartment for a mansion, you are still just running furiously in place. If your entire life's equation is confined under the sun, like you said, adding more zeros to a zero still leaves you with zero.
Which brings a really striking historical anecdote into focus from the source. Think about Alexander the Great.
Oh, yeah.
He conquered an empire stretching all the way from Greece to modern-day Pakistan. He was the undisputed master of the physical world. Yet he contracted a fever and died at just 33 years old.
So young.
Incredibly young. And according to historical tradition, as he lay dying, he issued a really bizarre final order to his generals.
What did he do?
He demanded that holes be cut into the sides of his coffin so that his empty hands could hang outside for the crowds to see as he was carried to his grave.
Wow. So he wanted a very public display of his own powerlessness.
Exactly. He wanted to visually demonstrate to his empire that even the man who held the earth in his hands took absolutely nothing with him when he crossed the threshold of death. It is the ultimate manifestation of hevel.
It really is. It makes me think of, spending decades sweating and bleeding to climb the corporate ladder, sacrificing your relationships, your health, your peace of mind.
Yep.
And then you finally reach the very top rung, you pull yourself up, you look around, and you realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall the entire time.
That is a devastating realization, and it forces a very uncomfortable question.
Okay.
If Alexander the Great's empty hands prove we can't take our wealth with us, and Solomon's misery proves that having everything doesn't actually fulfill us,
Yeah.
why do we relentlessly keep chasing more? Like, why are our brains wired to just ignore this overwhelming evidence?
Well, I'll take that a step further.
Yeah.
Because if you are listening to this right now, you are probably thinking to yourself, well, if I hit the Powerball tomorrow, I'd be perfectly content.
Everyone thinks that.
I wouldn't fall into that trap. But all the data says you absolutely would.
You would. And the ancient text diagnoses this too, right in verse 8. It states that the eye is never satisfied with seeing, nor the ear with hearing. Our sensory experience, when it's directed purely at the material world, is a bottomless pit.
It's just endless.
The source likens it to drinking seawater. The salt tricks your brain into thinking you are hydrating, but it actively pulls moisture from your cells, leaving you infinitely thirstier than before you took a sip.
That is such a vivid image. And that ancient observation maps flawlessly onto modern evolutionary psychology. We actually have a clinical term for this now.
Hedonic adaptation.
Yes, hedonic adaptation. And the psychology behind it is so fascinating because human beings are biologically hardwired to never remain satisfied.
Right, because from an evolutionary standpoint, perpetual satisfaction is essentially a death sentence.
Exactly. If our prehistoric ancestors ate a massive meal and felt perfectly, permanently content, they wouldn't go hunting the next day.
They just sit there.
Right, and they would starve. So our brains were designed to quickly adapt to any new baseline of comfort or success and immediately generate a craving for the next thing.
And the source mentions the famous 1978 Brickman study on lottery winners, which illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, I love this study.
It's amazing. Researchers tracked people who won massive jackpots and found that within just a few months, their baseline level of happiness reverted to exactly where it was before they bought the ticket.
It's almost hard to believe, but it's true.
The initial euphoria just evaporates. The sprawling estate becomes just the house. The Italian sports car becomes just the car.
Right.
The psychological treadmill resets, and that old familiar sense of lack creeps right back into their peripheral vision.
The treadmill never stops. And the historical example used in this analysis to really highlight that just a little bit more syndrome is chilling is John D. Rockefeller.
Oh, yes.
At his peak, Rockefeller controlled roughly 2% of the entire United States economy.
Which is incomprehensible.
I mean, in modern terms, his wealth would dwarf the top 5 billionaires alive today combined. He had everything. And he was asked by a reporter a very direct question. They asked, how much money is enough to finally satisfy a man?
And his response is legendary. Rockefeller smiled this kind of bitter smile and answered, just a little bit more.
Just a little bit more.
Yeah.
The man who literally monopolized the oil industry, who possessed more capital than sovereign nations, was still dying of thirst. He was drinking the seawater.
He was.
So we have to look at the underlying mechanics here. Why is the human heart such an inescapable black hole for material things?
Well, to understand the mechanics, the source brings in a concept from the 17th century French philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal.
Okay, Pascal.
In his work Pensée, Pascal wrote that there is an infinite abyss within every human being, and because this void is infinite in its nature, it cannot possibly be filled by finite earthly things.
It's mathematically impossible.
Exactly. It can only be filled by an infinite and immutable object. In other words, God.
It is the jigsaw puzzle analogy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, imagine you are putting together this massive 1,000-piece puzzle. You get down to the very center. There is one piece missing, and you realize you lost it.
Oh, no.
Right. So in a panic, you grab pieces from completely different puzzle boxes. You try to jam money into that empty space. When that doesn't fit, you try to smash a promotion or a new relationship or 1 million social media followers into the slot.
Just forcing it in.
Exactly. You can push as hard as you want, and maybe you wedge it in there for a minute, but the overall picture will never make sense because the edges simply do not align. The shape of that vacuum is uniquely designed for the creator.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, and it explains the next major pivot human beings make. Because when we inevitably realize that finite material pleasures cannot fill that infinite void, we don't usually stop striving.
No, we just change tactics.
Exactly. We just change our strategy for conquering hevel. We pivot from trying to accumulate things to trying to accumulate legacy.
The immortality project. Like, if I can't take the gold with me in my coffin, I will build a statue out of the gold so massive that nobody will ever forget my name.
Precisely. But Ecclesiastes systematically dismantles that strategy as well, right? In verses 9 through 11. It introduces what we could call the tragedy of forgetting.
The tragedy of forgetting.
Yeah, it observes that there is nothing truly new under the sun. But more brutally, it states that there is no remembrance of former things. The ultimate vanity is the inevitability of being completely erased by time.
Because time is undefeated.
Always.
The tombstones weather away until the names are smooth. The digital archives eventually corrupt. And even if your name survives in a history book for a few centuries, the very people reading that book will also pass away.
It all fades.
It does. And this tragedy of forgetting sets up what is arguably the most dramatic turning point in this entire analysis. And that is the wake-up call of Alfred Nobel.
Oh, Nobel's story is the perfect case study of a man forced to confront the illusion of his own legacy. So Nobel was this brilliant Swedish chemist and engineer who invented dynamite.
Right.
And he amassed a staggering global fortune by essentially revolutionizing warfare and construction. He was an absolute titan of industry. But his paradigm shattered one morning in 1888 when he opened a French newspaper and read his own obituary.
Which, first of all, imagine reading your own obituary over coffee.
Right. So his brother Ludwig had actually died, but a careless journalist mixed up the names and hit publish on Alfred's pre-written obituary instead.
Oh, man.
And seeing your own death notice is surreal enough, but the real shock was the headline. It read, "The Merchant of Death is dead."
Wow. The Merchant of Death.
Yeah. And the article went on to savage him, stating that he became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before.
So imagine the psychological whiplash there. Nobel is sitting there, alive and well, reading the final draft of his life's meaning. All his striving, his immense wealth, his patents, it all culminated in the world remembering him as a monster.
It terrified him. Absolutely terrified him. So he executed a massive pivot. He refused to let that be the final word.
What did he do?
He quietly rewrote his will, dedicating the vast majority of his unimaginable fortune to establishing a series of annual prizes for those who confer the, quote, greatest benefit on mankind in fields like physics, medicine, literature, and peace.
He essentially weaponized his wealth to buy a new legacy.
Exactly, which we now know as the Nobel Prize. He successfully changed his narrative from destruction to human progress. And the source uses this as a powerful warning siren. We don't have to wait for a typo in the morning paper to wake up and reorient our lives toward things that actually benefit humanity.
Okay, I love this story, but I have to push back here a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because I see a massive logical pothole based on everything we just established. The analysis frames Nobel's pivot as this great triumph over a wasted life.
Yeah.
But wait a minute. Ecclesiastes just definitively claimed that everyone and everything is eventually forgotten by history.
Right.
So if the sun goes supernova in a few billion years and completely incinerates the Earth, both the Merchant of Death and the Nobel Peace Prize turn into the exact same pile of radioactive ash.
That's true.
If every human memory is eventually erased, what is the actual mechanism that makes his pivot meaningful? Isn't the pursuit of a good legacy just a more socially acceptable version of hevel?
That is an incredibly sharp observation, and it highlights the exact tension the writer of Ecclesiastes wants you to feel.
Okay.
If you analyze Nobel's pivot strictly from a materialistic viewpoint,
Strictly under the sun.
exactly, under the sun, then you are completely correct. It doesn't matter at all. The universe does not care if you are a tyrant or a saint. It will swallow you all the same.
So how do we get out of that?
Well, the resolution to this existential nightmare requires a total paradigm shift.
We have to change the lens.
We have to look above the sun. The ultimate conclusion of this ancient wisdom is not despair, but a radical reorientation of our gaze. If you want a legacy that transcends hevel, you have to stop anchoring your worth to the temporary earthly realm and start anchoring it to the eternal creator who sits outside of time.
I see.
The analysis relies on a profound biblical metaphor here, which is having your name recorded in God's book of life.
Oh, I see this shift. You stop performing for history, which is an audience with amnesia anyway,
Right.
and you start living for the creator who possesses perfect eternal memory. You stop trying to carve your name into a rock that will eventually turn to sand, and you let God carve your name into eternity.
Beautifully put.
And what I find so compelling about this resolution is how it democratizes meaning.
How do you mean?
Well, if the answer was just build better legacy projects, then only the billionaires and kings like Solomon or Nobel could afford to buy meaning.
That's a great point.
But if the answer is shifting your gaze above the sun, the metrics of success completely invert. The ancient text emphasizes that it is actually the small, daily, invisible acts that constitute the new things of the kingdom of God.
The monuments fail, but the quiet acts of spiritual obedience endure.
Yes, showing radical kindness to a difficult neighbor, praying in the quiet of your room, acting with absolute integrity when you know for a fact nobody's watching, sharing your faith with a friend. I mean, these aren't things that get statues built.
No, they aren't.
But according to this worldview, these are the only things that do not rot, rust, or fade. It fundamentally does not matter if humanity forgets your name in 100 years. It only matters if God knows your name forever.
Which culminates in a very personal challenge for anyone interacting with this philosophy.
Right.
What would your obituary say tomorrow? Would it detail a life spent frantically running on the hedonic treadmill, accumulating wealth or status at the expense of your family and your faith?
Chasing the vapor.
Yeah. Or would it reflect a life anchored in eternal values, characterized by generosity, love, and a relationship with the divine?
It forces you to write your own final draft before someone else does it for you.
It really does.
So let's tie all these threads together. Life, when viewed purely as a material exercise, is a vapor. It is hevel. Chasing worldly desires to fill an infinite void is a biological trap. You end up like Rockefeller, dehydrated and desperate for just a little bit more.
Yeah.
But we possess the agency to wake up. We can step off the hamster wheel, recognize that the ladder of worldly success is leaning against a collapsing wall, and deliberately reorient our lives toward an eternal legacy above the sun.
It is the ultimate transition from chasing the wind to standing on solid rock.
It really is. Now, before we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. Something that bridges this ancient philosophy with the reality we are sitting in right this second.
I love these. Let's hear it.
So, we live in a bizarre digital age where we are constantly backing up our entire lives to the cloud. Every text message, every photo, every social media rant is recorded on a server somewhere, theoretically forever. In a strange way, technology has seemingly solved Solon's great fear of being forgotten by history. Your data will undoubtedly outlive your physical body.
Wow. Yeah, that's true.
But I want you to ask yourself, does a permanent digital footprint actually infuse your life with any real meaning? Or is an AWS server packed with petabytes of our personal data just a modern manifestation of hevel, just a glowing digital vapor that outlasts our bodies but leaves our souls entirely empty if we haven't connected with something truly eternal? Think about it.